I'm Brent. I purchased my first 924S nearly 20 years ago. I later turbocharged it and restored it from the ground up, so I know these cars inside and out. Not only do I daily drive them, but I've taken them cross country. I founded edredas so that everyone could build the 944 of their dreams. It doesn't matter whether you're looking to restore your car or just make it more reliable, you've come to the right place. So grab your tools and let's get started. So hey guys, today we're working on this 944 Spec car. It was a national champion 3 consecutive years, 2011, 2012, and 2013. It arrived here with no engine. We're going to be building one for it. So I'll just quickly walk you around it. Alright guys, I got the head loaded up to go to the machine shop. You can see that I've got the valves and the springs over in this bag, and here we got some new valve guides. Here's a look at the replacement engine. We're going to get it cleaned up and sleeved. Alright, we got the block sleeved. It's absolutely beautiful. This has been decked. We've got the new pistons here on forged rods. Flywheel has been resurfaced and cleaned up, and we got the crank here that's been drilled 90 degrees. I've got the engine in the shop now, so the next move is to get it on the stand so we can start putting it back together. The engine's now on the stand. Over here in these totes are all the components that I'm going to be installing. Down here's the head and the crank. One thing you want to do is just look over the block, make sure all the mating surfaces are clean and there aren't any nicks or dings anywhere in them. You also want to run a tap through all the bolt holes. I've already done that on this block, and I had to do that back here before I put it on the stand. Another thing you want to look at is this number stamped into the girdle. You want to make sure that it matches the stamp on the block. I've got the main bearings here, so I'm going to go ahead and get those on so that way I can install the crank, and hopefully we can get these pistons in today. Main bearings are now in, so next I'll install some assembly lube so we can put the crank in. The assembly lube is now applied. Keep in mind that you're going to have to install this piece here on the end of the crank before you install it, and it's going to have to line up with this dowel right here for the oil feed, and it's going to go just like that. So when that bearing is lined up, it's going to fall right into place. You're not going to have to force anything, and if it's raised up a little bit, you're going to know that it isn't sitting right. I have the crank in the block now, so I'll go ahead and install the other half of the bearings into the girdle so I can get it installed. I'm going to also install the rear main seal here, which is included in the bottom end gasket set. I have the bearings in the girdle now, so next I'll apply the assembly lube. So next I'm going to be applying some Loctite 574 flange sealant to this area right here, which lies between the oil pickup tube and the oil pump. All we're going to do is use a foam roller to apply it, just like this here. And so I'm going to take my flange sealant and I'm going to put it in this tray here and put it on the roller just like that. You're going to want to put a good bit down in here, just so that way it soaks into the foam. You don't really have to worry if there's still some residue of the old 574 on here, because when you apply the new coat, it will mix with it. You just want to put a very thin coat on there, and it should look something like that when you're done. I have everything torqued down now. Don't forget to put Loctite 270 on these M6 bolts up here. Once everything's done, then just try and rotate your crank. It should turn smoothly and easily. And at this point, we're ready to install the pistons, so we're going to turn the engine over. So the next thing I'm going to do is check the gap on the rings, but before I do that, I'm going to clean these cylinders out. Anytime you have any machine work done, you're going to want to take some automatic transmission fluid. Just put a little bit on a shop towel and run it down in the cylinders and clean them until you don't see any more black on your towel. So next I'm going to start filing the rings, and in order to figure out what the end gap needs to be, I'm going to be using this table here. Now I know that I have 100mm bores, so I need to first convert that into inches. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take 100 and we're going to divide that by 25.4, and that's going to give me 3.93 inches. So we use that, and since this is going to be on a road racing application, we're going to need to times that by 0.005. So I'm going to type times 0.005, and that's going to give me an end gap of 0.19. And if you come over here and look on the feeler gauge, that is 0.19 or 0.48 of a millimeter. So I need to file these down until I end up with 0.48 of a millimeter gap. So when test fitting your ring, you're just going to take it and stick it down in your cylinder. Now before, when I was just looking to see if I would need to file them, I didn't push them in very far. But this time I'm going to go all the way down to about right there on the cylinder, so that way this part lines up on both sides and I can be sure that the ring is in there perfectly level. With that done, I can take my feeler gauge here and put it down in here, and it looks like it fits perfectly. So I now have the upper rings done, and so next I'll start on the other ones. All right, I've got the second set of rings filed down now, and in order to know what size you need to file them to, you'll need to look at your sheet. Here I have 0.004 to 0.008 bigger than the top ring. So since I did all this in metric, I filed the top ring to 0.48. So 0.004 here in metric is actually 0.58 or 1/10 of a millimeter larger, but since this is a range, I went ahead and did 0.12 millimeters, which is 0.6. Next, I'll be checking the oil rings. They need to be at 0.015. Right now, they're at 0.01. All right, all the rings are now within spec. Next thing I'm going to do is clean everything up. I'm going to wipe down the cylinders again and wipe down the rings, and then we'll be ready to put the pistons in. I now have the rings filed and they're ready to go on the piston. So when you're installing them, you want to make sure that you spread them out in this direction. You do not want to take the ring and try and stretch it over top there, because if you twist it in this direction here, you can end up bending the ring and it's going to cause it to bind in the cylinder. So you're going to want a set of ring spreaders like this, and it's just going to spread the ring out like that, and then you'll just put it on the piston just like so. I have everything wiped down now, and as you can see, piston number 1 is ready to go in. Even though this is late block, we're going to be using forged rods. I also have brand new rod nuts over here. As for installing the rings, make sure you use a ring spreader tool. You never want to twist the rings, as I mentioned, because that will just mess everything up. So once you have your rings on, you're going to want to make sure that they're 180 degrees out from each other. You can see that the gap's going to be here on the top ring. Bottom ring's going to be down here. Then you're going to want to do the same thing with the oil rings. We've got a gap here on this side and the other gaps on the bottom down there. So anyway, guys, that's just about it. I'm going to go ahead and get this rod cap off here, and then we're going to put these pistons in. So when attaching the connecting rod to the piston, you want to make sure that this stamp number in the connecting rod is facing the left-hand side of the engine when the engine is upright. And when you install the connecting rod cap, you want to make sure that both numbers match and they're facing the same way. So I've got everything measured and the connecting rods are on now. Next, you want to just take the engine and rotate it just a little bit to make sure that everything is moving smoothly and nothing is binding up. I had the machine shop check this crank and everything looked good. So next, what I'm going to do is get the oil pickup tube on, and then I'm going to put the oil pan on along with the oil pump so we can get this engine down. All right, the oil pump is on, so next I'll get the oil pan on. The oil pan is on now, so next I'm going to install the balance shafts, and I've got brand new bearings here. We have the balance shafts resealed now, so next we'll install the oil pump drive sleeve. If you ever have any trouble telling your balance shaft covers apart, you're going to want to make sure that the stamp on them matches your stamp on your block, and they're always going to face up. So your lower balance shaft is going to have the same number as the one on the block, and it's going to face up like this, and the upper is also going to face up. So before we set it on the ground, we're going to go ahead and install the oil console. So we've got the engine mounts and the AC delete bracket on. I had to replace these bolts since the ones that were in there were too long and they were using spacers. So before we set this on the ground and start assembling the clutch, we're going to get the water pump and the oil console on. All right, the new water pump is now installed. All right, now that we got everything assembled, we're going to get it on the ground, then we're going to put the clutch on. We got the old pilot bearing out, so next we're going to be installing the new clutch. I've got the clutch assembled now, so next I'll get the clutch fork and the bell housing back on, and tomorrow we'll get this engine put in. When you're torquing down your pressure plate, you want to start on one side and move in a star or crisscross pattern, and that's going to evenly pull the pressure plate onto the flywheel. If you try and snug this down or work in a circular pattern, you will end up warping your pressure plate. So just start out here, snug it down just a little bit to pull itself on there, but not too much because you can end up stripping the threads out of here, and then just work yourself around. It's going to pull itself on there, and then by the time you get to your last bolt, you should be able to torque that one all the way down, but by the time you get back to the first one to start over again, it's going to be loose. So then you can torque that down all the way. Just go back and forth again, make sure everything's torqued down, and that's going to pull it on there evenly as it should be. and you will not end up warping your pressure plate. That said, I'm almost ready to install the bell housing, but before I do so, I need to replace the bearings in the clutch fork. The bell housing is now on, and I've got a lot of other things wrapped up here. So tomorrow we're going to try and get this engine in. So we're going to be removing these fuel lines here and installing a better set. Let's see how these are just clamped on there. Alright, we've got the engine ready to be raised into the car. We have the engine raised up and the torque tubes bolted on. Next we'll install the cross member. Alright guys, the new engine is in. Now that the engine is in, next we'll install the head. We've got the head on now, and TJ's installing the headers. The exhaust is all bolted up now, so next we'll get the spark plugs and the cam tower on. Spark plugs are in, so we're going to install the cam tower now. Alright guys, the cam tower is all finished up, so next we're going to install the new belts. I've got the belts on now. Next I'll get the belt covers on and work on installing the intake. Got the intake, fuel injectors, and the new fuel lines on. Now we just need to connect the battery and fill the coolant, and we'll be ready to start this car up. Alright guys, we just got the race car started. Everything's looking good so far. Alright guys, that's just about going to do it for this video. If you'd like to stay up to date with some of the projects we're working on around the shop, be sure to join us on Facebook. I'll leave a link in the description below. I also want to thank everyone who supports this channel on Patreon, since these videos wouldn't be possible without you. But anyway guys, that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Work on a race car. This is the man right here.
Appreciate it, man.
We'll see you guys. Be in touch, all right? Take care. Thanks again, guys.
No problem. You have a good one.